CBSN.
Meanwhile, Democrats are celebrating victories in two important elections for governor. In New Jersey, Democrat Phil Murphy beat the state's Republican Lieutenant Governor Jim Guadagno by 14 points, 56% to 42.
And in Virginia, Lieutenant Governor Ralph Northam defeated former RNC Chairman Ed Gillespie by 9 points, 53% to 44. Here's what Northam had to say after his victory last night.
Today, Virginians have answered and have spoken. Virginia has told us to end the divisiveness, that we will not condone hatred and bigotry, and to end the politics that have torn this country apart.
Let's bring in Ed O'Keefe. He's a congressional reporter for The Washington Post and a CBS News political contributor. He joins us from Washington. Ed, let's start, of course, with the race in Virginia last night. How significant is this win for the Dems?
I think we're still digesting it this morning, guys, but the turnout among Democratic voters or people who voted for Democrats was just overwhelming. They've not only won the governorship, they've nearly taken control of what's called the House of Delegates, their lower house, which was not expected by any forecast whatsoever. Not only that, they've held on to other down ballot seats, and I think it's indicative of what we saw elsewhere last night. The Democrats are now able to win these sort of lower tier races that help build out the bench. And frankly, this is a party that only had one direction to go, up. They had to win things. They did overwhelmingly last night. And it bodes well for what they're trying to do next year.
So let's talk about the Republican side. The GOP candidate, Ed Gillespie, he sort of seemed to try to go right down the middle, embrace Trumpism, but not President Trump. And He lost significantly. So what does that say?
It says that a guy like that can't do it. You've either got to go all in or you've got to avoid it entirely. Look, Ed Gillespie used to work for George W. Bush at the White House. He ran the RNC. He's been a big-ticket lobbyist here in Washington for several years, and he was trying to use Trump's campaign tactics to win a race that it just didn't fit with him, frankly. And I think you saw the president tweet overnight. He didn't embrace me. Look, he embraced some of the tactics. That didn't work. He didn't campaign with the president. President Trump becomes the first president since Richard Nixon to not go and campaign in the gubernatorial race in their state, in the neighboring state, the year after they won the presidency, which is a sign of how unpopular he is, not only in Virginia, but also up in New Jersey, where he didn't campaign either.
So, Ed, we're putting up that tweet from the president. I can see the president taking full advantage of the new character allotment for Twitter when he says that, don't forget, Republicans won 4 out of 4 House seats and the economy doing record numbers. Does not embrace me. Did not embrace me. Here's the question, though. We've been talking about this over the last couple of weeks. In a CBS News exit poll, 34% of voters in Virginia said that they cast their votes to oppose the president. We had been talking about what Democrats need to do. Do they run on opposition to Donald Trump and his policies, or do they run on what we can accomplish as a party? Is this an answer? Is this the answer we've been looking for?
Well, look at that poll. 47% said it had nothing to do with him. So Democrats probably want to focus more of their attention on that, on coming up with the issues that they think matter and the reasons why they should be elected, not why the other guy shouldn't. Obviously the anti-Trump thing is there. It's an element of this. It's driving a lot of the turnout and the enthusiasm and the recruitment that Democrats are seeing for political positions across the country. But I think ultimately you've got to come up with a message that explains why you should be elected. I think a good example of that came last night in a Virginia legislative race. That TV anchor, I believe it's Chris Hurst, whose girlfriend was killed live on television about 2 years ago, decided to quit his job, move to Blacksburg, Virginia, and run for a House of Delegates seat. Not solely based on the issue of gun violence, but mostly focused on the economy, education, health care, and yes, of course, gun violence, because he was inspired by that and got a lot of support from gun control groups across the country who wanted to see somebody like that win. So finding an affirmative message and maybe being inspired in part either for opposition to Trump or something else, that seems to work.
Although it is interesting, when you look at the numbers, Hillary Clinton did very well, but it seems as if last night the Democrats running did that much better, that much more. They just blew out some numbers that even Republicans and Democrat pollsters weren't expecting.
Yeah, as some are saying on Twitter this morning, Virginia looks more like Massachusetts this morning.
Right. That's just what is kind of interesting for me. And I'm not like an operative like you guys that know all the numbers as well as you do, but it just seems interesting to me that they did much better than she did when she ran for the presidency.
Well, and that says something about the quality of the candidates running. Look, in Virginia specifically, Ralph Northam is from the southeastern part of the state, sort of traditional southern Virginia. Comes across as a folksy, charming guy. It worked down there. He was able to run up the numbers, do very well with African-American voters in that part of the state. But then, by virtue of being the Democrat, the anti-Trump embodiment, and making a pretty strong pitch to voters up here in Northern Virginia, just across the river from Washington, he was able to run up the numbers there and exceed Hillary Clinton's numbers, as well as the incumbent governor, Terry McAuliffe's numbers from 4 years ago. So candidate quality, and Democrats know this. They've been focused on it over the last year. It matters. And I think that's also reflected in the fact that they won some really notable races across the country. The mayor of Manchester, New Hampshire, the first time in decades, is a Democrat. A Democrat-backed candidate won in a nonpartisan race down in St. Petersburg, Florida, where Republicans thought that they were going to be able to hold on to that part of the state. A woman gets elected for the first time as mayor of Charlotte, North Carolina. She's a Democrat. Democrats took full control of the Washington state government out west last night by winning a special election there. They picked up seats in Georgia. In each of these cases, it's somebody who came out of nowhere, well, not each of them, but in most of the cases, somebody who came out of nowhere, inspired by what's happened in the past year, put up a campaign in some places where Democrats have not run in recent cycles, and prevailed.
Right.
It'll work probably going into next year as well.
Did you mention the first transgender
No, I didn't.
in Virginia,
Right.
Virginia
First
State
openly,
House?
Openly transgender person has now been elected to a state legislature in this country. She beat the guy who was pushing the anti-transgender bathroom bill here or across the river in Virginia. That shows you that in that case, very specifically, it was a local issue. And a campaign focused mostly on Northern Virginia's miserable traffic.
Yes.
But the second issue was this divisive social issue. So that could be a warning as well to some who are pushing for those kinds of measures across the country.
Ed O'Keefe of the Washington Post, thank you so much.